Michigan Student Aid is excited to bring you the Michigan Achievement Scholarship webinar this evening. Welcome, everyone. My name is Nick Messing. I'm the Northern Michigan Outreach Representative for Michigan Student Aid programs. This evening, we're going to have a number of items related to the Michigan Achievement Scholarship. We'll start out with talking about the Q&A and how to pose questions if you have any. Program overview, where we will get into the requirements to qualify. I know you're excited to hear about that. So we'll also talk about some awarding scenarios and potential award values, resources that are available through our website, the FAFSA, because that is the key, the application to trigger this award, the upcoming webinars that we're having that you may be interested in joining as well. There'll be some reserved time at the end for question and answer as well. And don't forget, we'll have a survey at the end of the webinar before you log out. And we appreciate any feedback because we're always trying to make our webinars better. You will receive a copy of the PowerPoint slides and a video recording of this webinar within the next 10 to 14 days. So you don't have to worry too much about taking great notes. You're going to have exactly what you see on the screen as the slides, and you'll have the video to go back and rewatch this or any portion of it that you may need to in the future. So watch your email for that within the next couple weeks as a resource. So let's dive in. So questions this evening, if you have them, we are not using or monitoring the chat feature. We are only monitoring and using the Q&A feature. Now, the first few slides, we are really going to get into the program requirements. So a lot of the things you might be wondering, we will answer here in just a couple of minutes. So bear with us until we get to those slides. We're asking that they please be general questions because scenario specific or extremely detailed questions, those really belong directed to the financial aid offices to clarify your individual Michigan Achievement Scholarship award value and eligibility status. Once the financial aid office receives the student's FAFSA application, then they have enough information to answer your questions thoroughly and accurately. That is a little bit of a challenge to do in a webinar setting. So we just ask if you have a very scenario specific or a very detailed question, please point that in the direction of the financial aid office if we didn't cover it this evening. So let's dive into what the program is about. Michigan Achievement Scholarship is the largest ever Michigan investment in higher education funding. This program alone more than doubles Michigan's investment in higher education and in our students as residents of Michigan. It's projected that between 3/4 and 80% of students that complete a FAFSA will be anticipated to receive at least a partial or even the full scholarship value. Full or partial funding can be awarded along with most other state aid like TIP. Although it is limited, it cannot have a Michigan competitive scholarship with it. So that's the only one limitation with state aid, but TIP definitely can pair with it. And it also pairs with federal aid like Pell Grant. So Michigan Achievement, TIP program, Pell Grant, they'll all work together to help students afford to go to the school of their choice. The intent of this program really was to help reduce students' overall loan debt in the end. We know students are concerned, families are concerned about loan debt. Students, if possible, like to avoid that. And so this program and this funding is really intent on reducing students' dependence on loans to bring that loan debt down. The program funding is available to a student that's qualified a maximum of 5 years. So the 5-year limit is applied for the overall scholarship funding once the student begins receiving it. This program supports skills on different tracks or on different paths. Students that may just be interested in short-term skill training, this program will support, but it also supports students looking at a traditional college path for a 1-year certificate, a 2-year associate's degree, or a 4-year bachelor's through a traditional college program. It also supports students through that path. A majority of students will go that path. The program is limited to undergraduate studies, full-time enrolled at a Michigan approved training provider and a Michigan institution. So this is a Michigan sponsored program, and it is the funding's limited to be used within the state of Michigan. So let's dive into what is required. Complete the FAFSA each academic year. And that one, if I had to stop the webinar right now, I've given the most important piece of information right there. Complete the FAFSA each year. That FAFSA is the application for consideration for the Michigan Achievement Scholarship funding. So it all boils down to completing the FAFSA and having that shared with the schools that the student is interested in. Now, FAFSA is available each year as of October 1st. So our seniors this year have had access to doing a FAFSA since October 1st. We just encourage do that as soon as possible if it's not already done. Now, the results of the FAFSA, the student needs to demonstrate need, and they do that by having a FAFSA result, an EFC result from the FAFSA of 25,000 or less. That is the firm cutoff. So the state legislation drew a line in the sand. So those above 25,000 EFC are not considered eligible that year. Those at or below 25,000 EFC are deemed, are considered eligible. So there are some formulas and calculations that the financial aid offices will do once they receive that FAFSA to actually pinpoint the value, if it'll be a full award value or if it'll be a partial award value. Those calculations will happen within the financial aid offices. And so they'll be determining how much of the Michigan Achievement Award will fit into the student's aid package based on the requirements of the program. Michigan residency has to be maintained by the student, as well as citizenship, permanent residency, approved refugee. So student must have those statuses. And also the parent on the FAFSA must also remain a Michigan resident. The student must graduate from a Michigan high school or its equivalent, such as GED or certificate of completion, this year or after. So we are talking about those that have yet to graduate moving forward. So our seniors, our current juniors, sophomores, freshmen in high school, those are the students first in line at this point. But they must graduate from a Michigan high school in 2023 or in a future year graduating class. Enroll full-time as an undergraduate student at an eligible institution. And eligible institutions include Michigan's community colleges, tribal colleges, four-year public universities, and four-year private universities. So you will find, the student will find, one-year certificates, two-year associate's degrees, and four-year bachelor's degrees offered at a variety of those institutions. But it has to be within Michigan. The student must enroll within 15 months of high school graduation or its equivalent. So they've got a 15-month window to be full-time enrolled at a school in Michigan. And once the student begins receiving funding, once the student enrolls and begins receiving funding, the 5-year consecutive year limit begins. So they graduate in June, they start this fall, that starts the 5-year clock countdown of 5 academic years. If they wait a year and then they start a fall later, not the immediate fall, but a following fall, then the 5 consecutive years starts counting down at that point, but they must enroll within that 15 months and start that 5-year clock. The thing to stress here is completing the FAFSA each and every academic year. The student cannot be incarcerated or in default on a student loan, on a federal loan. So those are 2 things that would make a student ineligible automatically. So I mentioned earlier, there are two paths. I'm going to talk just briefly about short-term training and the ability to use this funding for some of those options. So the Michigan short-term training programs that can be supported through what's being called Michigan Achievement Skills Scholarship. So what this is a portion of the funding has been set aside and intended to be used to help students with their tuition if they're enrolling in shorter term programming. Maybe it's a few months long. It's not a full academic year normally. There will be a list on our website, and at the end of the presentation, you'll have our website. So you'll be able to go out there and read more about it. But students can participate in a short-term training or occupational training program with an eligible provider and receive up to $2,000 per year for up to 2 years. And that will count against their 5-year total. But this is an avenue for students to pursue some short-term training, shorter than what they'd normally find on a traditional college path. Now, the website is under development. This program is only about 3 months old, so there's still a lot of information and resources being developed and provided. The website will add a list of eligible providers in the coming months. So just watch the website if that's the track your student is interested in following as the short-term training. Now, students can't be simultaneously awarded Michigan Achievement Skills Scholarship for a skills training and a regular Michigan Achievement Scholarship for college enrollment. They cannot have those in the same school year, in the same academic year. So they have to be exclusively one or the other in the beginning, especially. Upon completion of a short-term certification course or training, recipients can still go on and receive the remaining Michigan Achievement Scholarship for the remainder of those 5 years. So if they've used 1 year of short-term training eligibility through the skills scholarship, they'll have 4 years left to use the regular Michigan Achievement Scholarship. If they've used 2 years in the short-term training, they'd have the balance of 3 years left to use at the college level through the regular Michigan Achievement Scholarship. So either way that it divides out, it's only going to total 5 years at most. Now, the requirements for the Michigan Skills Scholarships, those are a little bit different. They're just slightly different than the regular Achievement Scholarship. We just encourage you to watch the website, read the website to see exactly what the steps are for that and move forward following what's listed on our website, which you'll have at the end of this slideshow. We're going to talk about now shifting gears away from the short-term training and into more of the regular college level courses and programming. So your certificate programs in 1 year, 2-year associates, 4-year bachelors. So there's where we're going now. What's made available is based on the type of school students enrolling in. So as this slide shows, there is a maximum of up to 2,750 if a student were to attend a Michigan community college or tribal college. Now, the award is listed as an up to value as a maximum, because once the financial aid office gets the FAFSA and has all that information to work with and has all the other award information the student will be working with or receiving, then they're able to do some calculations that are required by the program. And so they will calculate to see how much of each piece of this program can be offered. So the 2,750 is actually 2 separate pieces combined. So there's a 1,750 minimum award value, and there's $1,000 last dollar award value. So they will run the math on what's in that aid package and figure out how much of each of those, and they may qualify fully for both. They might qualify fully for one, but not all of the other. And in that case, the student might see just a partial award, something up less than the 2,750. But many students will have the full minimum award. Not all students would end up with the last dollar award, or they might end up with less than the full last dollar award. So it really depends. And that's where we're going to rely on our financial aid office staff to do those calculations in order to tell the student how much they're eligible for. Now, you may be wondering, how do you find that out? Once the aid offices get the FAFSA, they will do all the math on the programs to award the funding programs that the student's eligible for, and they will include Michigan Achievement if the student is eligible. Now, they will create a summary, which is called an award letter, and they will send that to the student either by mail, by email, or they'll tell the student to log in to their self-service online through the school and view the information through the website. The school will direct the student how they'll get that information, but they will provide a summary of financial aid. So that is where you would see the value of Michigan Achievement Scholarship offered to the student based on the calculations that they needed to do. So what we've just talked about is specifically community colleges. So let's move on to Michigan public universities. So the four-year schools that are public universities. Up to $5,500 if a student were to attend a public university in Michigan per year. So again, that's a maximum value there. The financial aid offices will be calculating the two separate pieces to see how much of each the student can have. Student may have a full $5,500, or they may have a partial award, less than $5,500, depending on how those calculations work out with other aid included in their aid package. So again, that's the financial aid office that will summarize all of that for the student. Now, the other type of four-year college or university are the Michigan private colleges and independent colleges around the state of Michigan. The maximum that can be offered to a student through Michigan Achievement Scholarship is $4,000 at a private college or university. Now you can see that the values are listed there again are a little bit different because of the type of school. That private school financial aid officers will be calculating how much of each of the two types of award and offering up to $4,000 or a reduced amount just under $4,000. Resources. So as I mentioned a little bit ago about referring to our website, all of this detail is listed on our website. You can see that there are two tracks of sorts listed there. One track is the short-term training, which would be maybe just a few months long, that the first slide I mentioned was talking about with the Michigan Achievement Skills Scholarship. You can read all about those requirements and details, or you can go into the regular college track and see more information about those last couple of slides we had about community college, tribal college, four-year public and private schools. You'll find a lot of your questions answered out on that webpage under the frequently asked questions, the FAQs. We've got a section there dedicated for students and parents, and it has the questions that are commonly asked and the answers that go along with it. So we likely have some questions and answers there that you haven't thought of yet, but it's good to go out there and read through those so you're most familiar with the program details. Our social media resources are out there that you can join to stay up to date. Specific program details are all on that website. You can sign up because this is still so new. It's kind of a work in progress. There's more details and FAQs being added all the time. You can sign up. There is a spot on the website where you can add your email to get updates. So as things update on the website about the program, you can get an email that gives you a heads up. Hey, there's something new to go look at about the program, and you can go out and do so on our website. The QR code there will take you to the website as well. Hopefully after the webinar is over, you can spend a few minutes on that website just to be familiar with it. We're going to shift gears. I said earlier that the primary piece of information I really wanted to get across tonight was that this requires the FAFSA. So those that do not yet have the FAFSA completed, we want to walk through a little bit of detail of how to do that and make the process as smooth as possible. Registering the student and the parent for an electronic signature, or what's called a Federal Student Aid ID or FSA ID. The student needs an FSA ID and the parent that's on the FAFSA needs a FSA ID, an electronic signature essentially. You can see the website there at studentaid.gov/FSA-ID. I wanted to give you a visual. You'll see when you get out to that page that it is Federal Student Aid, Office of the Department of Ed, just so you can see the branding. This is something I don't ever recommend Googling. I know parents, students, they get in a rush to do some of this, but sometimes that doesn't work out well because you end up in a spot that you really don't want to be, or you might end up in a spot that is a scam type of a situation. So you want to make sure you type in studentaid.gov/FSAID to make sure you're in the right spot to create that electronic signature. So just to scroll down on that web page, you're going to have a section to create the ID, username, a password, and move forward from there in creating your ID. And then that's used as electronic signature, one for the student and one for the parent to sign the FAFSA application when you're through. Now, starting the FAFSA, you would do that process on fafsa.gov. So you'd want to type that in directly, fafsa.gov, to make sure you're on the right spot. Visually, again, you're going to see the branding of Federal Student Aid, Department of the U.S. Department of Ed. You'll see at the top there, it says there's a start here button that says new to FAFSA. So the first time a student ever goes into the system, they would start there, get logged in. The student would begin filling out their FAFSA application, because remember, the FAFSA is the students. The parents' information does normally get added in, but the application itself is the student's application. So the student is the primary applicant for all of this. And so the student would finish their FAFSA, make sure the FSA ID is used to sign it. They would indicate which schools and colleges that they want to receive the results, and then they would submit it. And it would take a few days, usually takes 2 or 3 days to process. The student will get an email at the email address they provide, confirming when the processing is finished and when it's been shared with schools. Once the schools get it electronically, they'll begin working with the information. If they need more information or if they need to clarify anything, they'll reach out to the student, either through the regular mail or through email. And at that point, if something more is needed, please respond to those requests so they can keep moving forward. But if they have everything they need, or once they have everything they need, then they can move forward and award the student their financial aid. And so that's where they would stop and look at and see if are they offered any scholarships from the school, and then what other aid can the student be offered, and create an award letter summary of all of that financial aid, including Michigan Achievement if the student is eligible. Now, as a returning student on the FAFSA, they can always log in as a returning user. And as a returning student in later years, as a college level sophomore, junior, senior, the FAFSA gets way easier because a lot of the information that is requested the first year doesn't have to be requested again. So you're just updating some information about family size, number in college, income, and asset information of the parent and the student. So there's less to update than the first time filling out a FAFSA when it's just a blank form. There's a lot of help along the way. So when you're in the FAFSA, there are help buttons. There's a chat feature where you can chat with a Department of Ed representative to help you. You can find FAFSA help on this page as you go into the form. There's a lot of information and help surrounding the process. There's even a phone number where the Department of Ed has a call center support available every day of the week, including weekends. They have the 1-800-4FED-AID line where you can call if you have questions, if you get stuck on any question and need a little help to move through and answer that question to finish the application. You can also follow them on social media for updates. They will give reminders, especially when like the FAFSA is made available each year on October 1st. They'll remind students of that. I'd recommend if you're going to do social media, just pick one because they're going to send the same message out to all of them. And again, you'll have a copy of this presentation. You'll have a video recording. You'll be able to get back to all the websites and phone numbers that I'm sharing tonight. So FAFSA facts, it can be completed online, and please avoid being scammed. Keep yourself safe. Completing that FAFSA is free, but make sure you're on FAFSA.gov. So that is the official site. Available each year as of October 1st, and the FAFSA is something the student would complete and submit for each academic year. Each academic year has its own designated FAFSA application. Now, some state aid, not the Michigan Achievement Scholarship, but some other financial aid offered through the state of Michigan has a May 1st priority consideration. So not about the program we're focused on tonight, but some other aids. So if you want to try to maximize the student's financial aid, then make sure to have the FAFSA completed somewhere between October 1st and May 1st. That is the best time to maximize your aid. Ideally, I have always recommended to students and families, make sure it's done over the Christmas break in future years, and then that's a good habit to be in, especially if a student and when a student's home for the Christmas or holiday break, student and parent is together so they can work together to finish that application quickly. So the 23-24 FAFSA, that is the FAFSA that is available now since October 1st, and that is available to the class of 23 or students that are older. The current junior class, their FAFSA will become available to them to complete this coming October 1st. So we're about 9 months away from the current juniors having access to complete the FAFSA. It's normally always the senior year fall semester is basically how it works. So the fall semester of the senior year is when the student does their FAFSA application. There's been improvements made to the FAFSA to where you can pull in income information, tax information from the IRS. Just one thing that makes it much easier, have a copy of your federal tax form in front of you, because you have to know the address that was used right down to the punctuation when you're trying to pull in that IRS data retrieval. So let's talk just briefly about EFC, or expected family contribution. So we saw earlier on the slide that the EFC of $25,000 or less was required for the Michigan Achievement Scholarship. After the student completes their FAFSA, submits it, it's processed, the student's going to get a notification of what their EFC is. The school will also get a summary and the EFC value as well, so they know what they're working with. The EFC, very simply, is a need indicator. What need level is the student at? It'll be used by the financial aid offices to determine what to include in the aid package. Now, the EFC is not the amount the student or the parents were going to need to pay up front. It has nothing to do with charges. So it does not indicate what it's going to cost. It's just indicating need level, and then financial aid offices go forward knowing the student's need level and offering aid that's appropriate for that need level. Variables that impact the EFC: student income and parent income, the total family size in the household, and the number in college in that household. Now, for Michigan Achievement Scholarship consideration, it does require that an EFC be $25,000 or less for that academic year to be eligible. Once your chosen colleges receive that FAFSA, they're going to calculate those awards, including the Michigan Achievement, send that award letter summary of aid, and tell that student what they're eligible for. And they'll tell the student if they have Michigan Achievement Scholarship, if they're able. Want to shift gears a little bit again. We've talked about Michigan Achievement, which can be a huge resource for students, but there's a lot of other sources for students as well. Out on our website, and you're going to have that on the next couple of slides as well, out on michigan.gov/MI student aid, we have a students and families tab at the top, and there's a wealth of information there, including student guide, different program flyers, There are publications there to help the student. There is a Michigan Scholarship Self-Service Tool. So that's a visual that I'm giving you right now. A lot of the outside scholarships that we're aware of are here in a database on our website. If the student simply enters their county of residence in the bottom of the screen there, just toggle to their county, then it will pull any scholarships that are specific to students that reside in that county and that require county residence, or it will pull scholarships that are general enough that anyone in Michigan can apply. So that we wanted to make available, knowing that this is scholarship application season for things like this. But please keep in mind that there can be some with deadlines as early as the end of January, maybe end of January, early February, early March. You're going to see it depending on the scholarship program. You're going to see a lot of deadlines on these types of scholarship applications listed here in the next, I would say, 6 to 8 weeks. So that is something to turn your attention to if the student plans to do some outside scholarship searching locally. So this can be a really helpful option for them to identify local resources to apply for. Upcoming webinars. One of the other things that you'll see on our website is an Understanding Your Award Letter page. And we are also offering in a few weeks a series of webinars about understanding your award letter. So it's going to be the same webinar, so just choose one to attend if you'd like to. But we're going to talk a little bit about how to compare financial aid award letters, tools to help the students and families make the best financial decision, better understand the individual scholarships and grants and loans that the student may be offered in their award letter summary, scholarship search resources and easy to use budgeting tools, submitting general aid related questions. That is an opportunity for you to ask some general questions about it and receive real-time answers like this evening. You can RSVP for that on our homepage. It's michigan.gov/MI-student-aid. And so we'll be basically giving you a tour through that website to make sure you fully recognize all of the wonderful tools that we have put together on the Understanding Your Award Letter page. Our webinars are free of charge and always open to the public. We encourage you, because we're trying to get the word out about this and the Michigan Achievement Scholarship, please, if you're able, post this on your social media, share it with family and friends that you know have high school seniors and those that are going to be graduating coming up this year, and even lower grades, to let them know ahead of time when the time comes that they're seniors that this may be an option for them. So please help us get the word out. We're trying to spread it to all Michiganders so that they know that this is a great new option with a huge potential impact. We've reached the point where we will open it up for questions. A lot of our questions can be answered on michigan.gov/achievement. We have the frequently asked questions section out there. Please rely on that over time. We will keep adding more question and answers on there as a resource. So if you check it here in the next week or so, keep coming back to it every little while and see what's new. You can email us after the fact. If you think of something at a later date, you can always email us at michigan.student-aid@michigan.gov or call our contact care center. This is our call center staff. They will be happy to answer state aid questions for you if you have one. If it's not something you find on the website, feel free to give us a call or an email. We'd be happy to help. Now, some other resources that you also have access to are your high school counselors. We've been doing webinars for high school counselors and for college financial aid staff. So your high school counselors and your college financial aid offices, they are good resources. High school counselors know the general requirements of the program and can help students better understand how to qualify, how they would qualify. Financial aid offices can actually answer the questions about will I qualify? How much did I qualify for? Why didn't I maybe qualify for the full amount? That type of question really needs to be with the financial aid office, because they're doing the calculations to actually pinpoint the value that can be offered to the student for Michigan Achievement funding. And again, we encourage you, please share this with other high school age students and especially seniors and their families to help get the word out. And we'll appreciate it before you leave us, if you please take a moment to provide some feedback in our survey when you leave the webinar. It just helps us make these better and better. We've got a few staff behind the scenes that are tackling questions and answers and trying to write responses as quickly as possible. I'm just going to kind of skim through to see if there's a few that I can mention here that are good for the larger group. So bear with me for just a moment as I'm trying to find some good questions to share. Does the program support master's programs? It does not. The Michigan Achievement Scholarship is limited to undergraduate coursework. So only the one-year certificate, two-year associates, for your bachelor's programming can be funded through the Michigan Achievement Scholarship. How long will the funding be available? We have a high schooler and a middle schooler. Will it still be available for the middle schooler? The intent of the program is for future legislative budgeting process to continue funding. So the intent is that this will continue to be funded in future years. And so that is the intent. It does go through budgeting and the funding allocation like it normally does with the state budget each year, just as all of our state aid has done over the years. So this will be the same thing, but Michigan Achievement is intended to be a long-term resource for Michigan resident students. So that's why we want to get the word out, not just to our seniors, but to our other high school students and even middle school and even lower, just so they know that there is something there when the time comes that is significant. Another question is the flexible part of the award completely based on EFC? Part of the calculation that the school is looking at is tuition and fee costs, total costs for everything for the school year, and other aid received. So it's the EFC kind of pre-qualifies the student, and then from there, they have to do the math at the school level, at the college financial aid office level, looking at costs and looking at other aid to see how much of the limited amounts of achievement can be offered to that student. Someone said they think they may have made an error or a mistake on their FAFSA. Can I redo it? The student can initiate a correction. So on the FAFSA, the student would simply go in and log in as a returning user. They're going to enter their FSA ID to get logged in. They're going to go to the section that needs correction. They're going to enter the corrected information, make sure the parent FSA ID is also entered, and then they're going to submit the correction for processing, and that will cause the correction and process to go through again. And the financial aid office will, at the schools that the student chose, they'll all get a copy, and so will the state office. We'll all get a copy of the updated FAFSA, the corrected FAFSA information. So that is definitely an option to do a correction. Someone asked if students can use the Michigan Achievement Scholarship and competitive scholarship. The answer is no. The one exception is that students cannot use both the competitive scholarship funds and the Michigan Achievement Scholarship funds. So normally it is going to go with the Michigan Achievement Scholarship because it is typically a much higher value, but they cannot receive both of those programs in the same aid package. Will only the school that the student listed first as school choice number 1 be notified of their state aid eligibility? The school that is school choice number 1 will be the school to see the official awarding at the state level, but all of the colleges will be likely making the assumption and awarding based on some assumptions that if they see the student is a Michigan resident and the student meets the other criteria, the EFC and so forth, the graduating year, all of that, many colleges will move ahead based on when they see the student meeting those eligibility factors, they'll likely go ahead and include it in the aid package. That's a college level decision, all may not, but most will end up likely doing that. So you may want to chat with your financial aid office just to see if they'll include it, even if you're not listing them as school choice number 1, but normally they would. So someone asked, does a 2022 high school grad qualify? They do not qualify. So it is strictly those students that have not yet graduated yet. So 23 graduates move and forward. So 23 grads, 24 grads, 25, and so forth. So it does not retroactively go backwards to earlier graduating classes. If colleges sent out an estimate of the Michigan Achievement Scholarship, will that end up being the actual amount, or when will we know the final amount? Colleges will use estimates at sometimes starting out, especially early in the year. As time goes on, if there's other aid that comes in to the aid package, it can cause changes in other aid offered, and that could happen. That could affect Michigan Achievement. So you just kind of want to keep an eye out or have the student watch their financial aid to see if there's any adjustments being made, especially when additional funds come into the aid package. But it's really made official at the point that the student is enrolled and begins enrollment at that point. So the timing of it can adjust pretty much anytime other aid comes into the aid package, even throughout the school year. So there's really not a cutoff per se of where it becomes official, but they'll be working with it to be as accurate as possible all the way along. One question here is, will the student's award amount for Michigan Achievement appear in the My SSG student portal? And that is our state system, our state of Michigan system. Or will it only appear on the institution's award letters? It will actually show both, but our portal will show those that have met that initial eligibility of Michigan residency, the EFC being 25,000 or less, and so forth. But the award letter from the college is going to confirm how much they're eligible for after they've done the math specific to that school at that college and that school. So it gets school specific at that point within the limits of the program. One question here, what if students do not have parents or a guardian? A lot of students we work with are on their own. Students that are in that situation where they are very, very much independent, they need to reach out directly to the financial aid office and talk with them about the student situation. There is something called professional judgment for a dependency override. So if there is no contact with either parent, if there is no contact or no guardian assigned to the student, if they are homeless or at risk of being homeless, There's a number of ways that the financial aid offices can work with students that are in those dire situations and work with them to get them to the point that the financial aid is based only on their information. So, but make that call to the financial aid office, ask them to walk the student through that process, and then try to help support that student as much as possible, move through that appeal process for dependency override. One question, do you need to file a tax return on the FAFSA? For the FAFSA, I'm the parent and not required generally. No, there is an option on the FAFSA to indicate will not file. So that is a possibility that you did not have to file, so you put will not file for that tax year, and that's totally fine. Does this have to be paid back? No, this is a scholarship. So scholarships and grants do not get repaid. Only loan funds are expected to be repaid. Someone asked, just to kind of recap the application process, that is, the student does the FAFSA, submits it, includes the schools they want to receive it. The schools will receive the information as a summary. They'll see what the student's EFC is, all the information on the FAFSA. They'll see what other aid the student qualifies for, either through the school or through the federal government or through the state of Michigan or other sources. They will be able to then determine how much of Michigan achievement can be included in that aid package. So this is in addition to a lot of other aid options that are out there. So Michigan achievement, though it's now a big piece of the puzzle, it is still just one piece of the puzzle that the financial aid offices can put together and offer the student as resources. Those that have already received award letters, likely you may want to call the financial aid office and just ask on the timing with including the Michigan achievement, because some may still have to go through and add it in as a revision. So if you don't see it there, you may want to call and ask if it's still going to be considered and added in, or if what the award letter shows is the final result at this point. So reach out to your financial aid office to see if it's something yet to be determined, or if it's something they already calculated before sharing the award letter. Can some of the funding be used for housing and other expenses? Yes, there's a portion of it that can be used towards other expenses other than just tuition. Is it possible to be eligible one year but not the next? That is accurate. Yes, it is possible to be eligible one year but not the next, because there is a separate FAFSA for each year, and that is based on a certain calendar year. The FAFSA uses 2-year-old information. So like, for an example, the 23-24 FAFSA uses in the calendar year income information from 2 years prior. So 2 years prior to 23, it's the 21 calendar year tax year. So it's 2021 income to 2021 tax info that is used for the 23-24 FAFSA that our seniors are completing right now. But because of that income change year to year, the EFC can rise and fall, typically within a normal range if the income is stable, but a student could, dip below that 25,000 EFC for 1 year, could rise a little above for another year. They could float in and out of the program that way, but it'll always be based on that 25,000 cutoff. Is Michigan competitive an option? It is. Michigan competitive cannot be awarded along with Michigan achievement. It is normally going to be the higher value achievement award that they get of the two of them. Someone asked, how does it work when there is MET or 529 savings for the student? It is just fine. The MET or the 529 savings does not affect this award directly. You would simply, if it is parent as owner, then you would put it as a asset of the parent. So you would enter the value of the savings programs as parent asset if it is parent owned. And when you did the FAFSA, so that's the only spot it would show up. But in that case, they're only counting a fraction of the parent assets normally. So there's a lot of protection built into that. So 529 plans do not significantly hinder this award consideration. My student is in early middle college and is finishing their 5th year. With an early middle college program, or even dual enrollment program, a student may be taking college credits, either a few or more fully as an official early college program. They do not earn their high school diploma until those are done. Those credits are done, and they earn that high school diploma and are considered a 23 grad at this point if they're graduating this year. So when they finish the early college program, then they're considered a high school grad. So this program would still be an option for those students that are in early college programs and technically graduating in 23 or a later year. Someone asked, I had mentioned the competitive scholarship a couple times. That is another state funded award that is offered to those that demonstrate need and the student has an SAT score of 1200 or higher. So it's the high SAT scoring students and demonstrating need. Someone asked, could different college award letters reflect different amounts? Yes, it will be based on what type of college it is, as we went through those screens earlier, because different community colleges, private colleges, public colleges, they have different limits, but also that student is going to have different combinations of aid likely at the different colleges. And so that comes into the calculations as well. So other aid is always factored into this calculation for these funds. So it can vary slightly aid package to aid package, school to school. Someone asked, what if the student doesn't know what college to send it to? That's where the student probably wants to work with their high school counselor to have some career conversations and some college conversations. Maybe take some tours, spend some time online researching colleges and trying to take some college tours, do some net price calculators. For each college has an estimating tool called a net price calculator. It's usually on either the financial aid page at the college or the admissions page. But the net price calculator is very handy because it will ask some basic questions and it will give a very rough estimate of what cost versus financial aid is likely to look like. It's going to be a ballpark estimate, but it'll give a general sense of how much out of pocket that student might experience if they attended that school. So that can really help to narrow the number of schools or colleges that the student is looking at. If they're looking at a bunch, it may help them narrow it down to just a couple. And that's actually a good process to do early so that the student can focus on just one or two and then really kind of dive into the support structure and the orientation and getting admitted to the ones that they really have a good fit with. This question is, if a parent does not file a tax return, will they have to write a letter? No, if a parent doesn't normally file a tax return, then student would answer on the FAFSA that the parent did not file. So there will still be questions for income earned for the applicable tax year. So for current seniors, it's the 21 calendar year tax year. But no, they would indicate will not file, but then the earned income, wages, salary, and et cetera, would be indicated as a separate question for parent one income and parent two income. Someone asked if that EFC rises and falls from year to year. Student may be eligible one year, but not the next. Yes, that is kind of what's built into this program, is the student may end up having eligibility one year, but not the next, depending on that, where they end up with the EFC, that 25,000 EFC, higher or lower. So that will fluctuate normally year to year. For those that are maybe towards that are close to that right from the beginning, they might float above it or below it, just kind of in a natural range because of the family income. So, but yeah, that a student might get it one year, not the next. They might be backed into it the following. So that it may not be a steadily received program, but it may affect a few of the years enrolled. Oh, you're welcome. We're trying our best to answer questions. Someone said, how do you apply for the scholarship? And that's probably the most important piece we talked about tonight. It is all about the FAFSA. So the FAFSA application is what the student would complete and send that to the schools the student's interested in, so they can do the calculations and look and see, is this student able to receive the Michigan Achievement Scholarship funding? And they'll run the calculations to see how much is able to be included in the award letter. Someone asked, when does an early middle college student apply? An early middle college student would apply the fall of their 5th year. So normally students would apply and do their first FAFSA the fall of their senior year, but early middle college students have that additional year. So it kind of delays it by one more year. So they would do their FAFSA the fall after October 1st of their 5th year if they're in an early middle college. Someone asked, how long does it take to get the EFC once the FAFSA is completed? Typically, once the FAFSA is completed and submitted, normally it will offer and it'll send an email confirming the EFC within a matter of days, just a couple of days at the most. Sometimes it's the very next day. And so knowing that, you can get an idea of what the EFC is, and if it falls within the 0 to 25,000 range for the Michigan Achievement Scholarship requirement. How do we determine the EFC? That will come in that email from the Department of Ed. It's not going to show as a dollar amount. So it may start with a 0. It is normally 6 digits allowed. So it might be 0 and then the number, but basically it would be anything from 0, 25,000 and less is the number you'd be looking for. Can the scholarship funding be used towards room and board? Part of it can be if the tuition and fees are already met. Yes, so a portion of it, that's something that they have to look at in the calculation. If there's still room, other charges, other costs not covered yet, that there's some potential there to have some Michigan Achievement help with other costs like room and board. Someone asked if we already filled out the 23-24 FAFSA. Will this be included? Yes, all 23-24 applicants would go through consideration for this. I think the concern sounds like the timing. So a lot of this is just getting rolled out and just getting started. If that FAFSA was done, a month ago, 3 months ago, that's fine. That'll still get considered with this new program. Someone's asking what happens if the parents move out of state at some point while the student's enrolled. Both the student and the parent on the FAFSA has to remain Michigan residents. So that is something the FAFSA asks each year. So if a student remains in Michigan as a student, but the parent moves out of state, then the student would no longer be eligible for Michigan competitive because both parent and student have to remain Michigan residents. I think we have a question from a high school counselor asking about sketches. This particular webinar did not have sketches tied to it, so I'm sorry about that. We do have counselor-based webinars coming up on February 14th. So check our website or check our Gov delivery announcements for those. Those will have, I believe, some sketch credit eligibility. We're getting down to our last half a dozen of questions. So this is good timing. We were hoping to keep it around an hour this evening. I thank all of you that have hung in there with us. Again, please take a moment as you're exiting and provide your feedback. Hopefully you found this helpful this evening. It's quite a variety of information, but it's information either directly or indirectly pertaining to Michigan Achievement Scholarships. So pretty much everything we talked about tonight has something to do to either be eligible for it or other sources of aid that can be in combination with it to help the student afford their school of choice. So trying to lead you to our website information because we've got a great website and we're improving it all the time. Check out the Understanding Your Award Letter tools that are on there. You're welcome to join our webinar that'll walk through that website and all the resources there so that you know what you have access to and can use those resources to make a great decision for the student and for their benefit. So I think we've only got about 5 or 6 open questions. We're probably gonna call the end of the webinar here in just another minute or two. So just keep in mind, you may be thinking about this through the evening, through the weekend. You're always welcome to email us at michigan.gov and be happy to respond via questions that way. You're welcome. You're very welcome. Thank you. There's a lot of appreciation rolling in, so thank you. We're glad you found it informative. Yep, the survey will be presented as you log out. How do you sign up for emails? The email update sign up is on our webpage. So if you go to michigan.gov/achievement, there is a link there to sign up for email. So it's pretty clearly, you may have to scroll down more towards the bottom of the page, but it is there on that page directly. All right. You're welcome. Thank you, everybody. It looks like we're ready to close this down here in a moment. Have a great night. Thank you for the survey information at the end.